Brussels sprouts and cauliflower, onion, fennel and cucumber, plum, pear and papaya, aubergine and saya, lime, lentils and quinoa, oatmeal bread and oatmeal flour, watercress and okra, tofu and sweet pepper.
Okay, Verula has the last question. That was but you will stay for the Galla and
oh yeah, I'll be here all evening.
Can talk to you. Okay.
Okay, I'm also known as Vegan Dragon YouTuber.
Applauding you for drinking later.
Okay. Yeah, I'm known for Vegan Dragon on YouTube, tiny channel. And I've been a fan for you a long time, long before you started talking about veganism. But I saw your debate with Mikhail Peterson, and I was so disappointed. Like, not only did you say things like talking about like if it's more practical for you to eat meat and call you vegan, you also said that if shooting an elk would reduce suffering, then go ahead and shoot an elk and call yourself vegan for whatever I care. These like reducitarian, utilitarian arguments. But you also named a trait which you can actually bring the other way around. So I want to ask you, what is it that's true of an animal that, if true of a human, would make it okay to remove a human's right to life because it's more practical for a certain individual, and it would also reduce suffering?
In 1 minute and 57 seconds.
I know.
Yeah, a lot of people were disappointed with that conversation. As I said, you've got to be aware of who you're talking to. Michaela Peterson's audience are very similar to Jordan Peterson's audience, and I didn't think it'd be very effective communication if we were to get into too much of a debate. And in fact, many of the comments said, what I was essentially going for was the kind of comment that says something like, man, I usually hate vegans, but this guy's all right. You know, something like that. Trying to build a bridge. Michaela's coming on my podcast, and I was hoping to actually address these exact problems, because when she's on my turf, it's much more of an opportunity to debate this kind of stuff. On the name the trait point, the difficulty, I think, here, because you're quite right to point out that, well, for a start, as I say, I'm interested in the reducing of animal suffering here. So a lot of people said, oh, that's a bit too utilitarian for me, like you're not really, you disappointed me because you're not sort of basing this on rights. It's like, well, I never did that. And maybe we just have a disagreement about the nature of ethics. If you think animals have a right to life and it's very important to respect that right more than it's important to reduce suffering or something, I'd love to know how it is that you ground rights. What are rights? Where are they? How do they exist? How does a person get them? What has rights and what don't? This kind of stuff. This is important, because I don't think that this kind of stuff can apply. I think rights are a useful concept that we use to minimize suffering in the long haul. That is something like rural utilitarianism. And so I made a video a while ago about animals having a right to life in the same way that humans do. I don't think that they can, because if they did, we'd have to starve ourselves. And the reason for that is that, imagine that situation where I can shoot an elk. Let's imagine that by shooting that elk, and of course this can't be true of like how the whole world eats, it's just this particular situation. I can go and hunt that elk. Well, let's say my other option is to eat some imported vegan food that involves multiple animals dying in the crop death production, and also environmental pollution from it traveling. What's the right thing for me to do then? Is it to eat that elk, or is it to demand that food? Now for me it's very simple. I want to have the least or the minimal impact on animal suffering that I can. And so if by shooting that elk I'm going to cause less animal suffering and less animals are going to die as well, then I think that that's the right thing to do. Whether or not that's the vegan thing to do is another question. I understand why people would say that it's not. But the objection might be something like, well, you wouldn't do that to a human being, would you? Well, the thing is, I wouldn't do that to a human being, but I also wouldn't eat vegan food if it involved killing human beings in order to produce crops. People have pointed out that in crop deaths, it's kind of accidental death, rather than intentionally taking the life of an animal in order to eat food. That's not always the case. We use pesticides, we destroy habitats, you know, farmers will purposefully kill animals to prevent them from destroying their crops. And so, if a human being, if the only way for me to eat some crops were for me to go and kill another human being and take their food or something, if that was what was involved in eating food, we've got a choice to make. We either say that human beings have a right to life that we can't violate and therefore we starve ourselves, or we say that we can actually kill that human being because it's a situation of survival. Whichever one you say, I just think you need to be consistent with animals as well. So for me, if there is such thing as a right to life that human beings have, what makes something a right is that it's inviolable. That's what a right is. It's a moral principle that cannot be violated. And that means that even if I'm going to starve, I don't get to kill a human being to eat that food. Okay, Now the question is, do animals have the same right? Do they have that same thing? Well, if they did, it would mean that I couldn't kill animals in the same situation. So that means even if I needed to in order to survive, I couldn't kill an animal in order to produce food for me. If that's the case, then we'd have to starve to death. Now, you're welcome to choose what you like. Maybe you think that they do have that right to life, but then you're not going to be able to eat even vegan food because you're killing animals, and again, intentionally, in the production of food. And the fact that you're not eating the animals directly that you're killing and they're just dying in the crop production is much the same as the fact that you don't eat the chicken that you're harming to get the egg. It's about harming animals in the production of that food. So I just don't think that this concept of a right to life exists of these animals. And so that would be the trait. It requires a bit more justification, but I'm trying to keep this condensed, but we can talk about this afterwards as well. But I consider rights to be a useful shorthand that don't actually exist. They're not real things. The right to life is a bit like saying the gun is always loaded. It's not always loaded, but we're going to adopt that into our ethical, we're going to adopt that ethical maxim that the gun is always loaded because it's going to be much better for us in the long run. Rights do the same thing, but I don't think the same thing can be applied to non-human animals for a variety of reasons, including the one that I've just given. But we can talk more about that afterwards. But yeah, I suppose that would be the trait.
Thank you.